when it's starting, and there it goes. I think it's live. Here we go. Live with Mike Bledsoe, the Mike Bledsoe of the Mike Bledsoe Show and the Strong Coach, formerly of Barbell Shrugged. And I think that's how a lot of people probably know you. I know that's how I was first introduced to you. Barbell Shrugged. You still in touch with those guys?
Yeah, I was just talking to Doug the other day. So they had kept one of my domains on their server, and I was like, "Hey, I need that thing back."
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, we're all friends and still keep up, and those guys are doing great. So super happy that they were able to continue to do really good things, even though I'm not there.
Very cool. Well, maybe another day we'll get into the drama and what happened there, but that's okay. We don't have to do that today. We're here to talk about the Strong Coach and some aspects. So, Mike, here is you've shifted, and your primary focus now is coaching other coaches. I've listened to a bunch of the episodes of the Mike Bledsoe Show. Ironically, as I texted you the other day, you just had I'd say a friend of mine. We were not like best friends, but Jeremiah Dupin. He kind of got. We had a lot of overlap in Dubai. He was working for one of the wealthiest humans on earth as his trainer, and I was surprised that didn't come up in that conversation. And I almost took over for him at some point. That's a whole nother weird, crazy story, as a lot of things from Dubai are weird and crazy. But yeah, Jeremiah, that's a great episode for anyone. We can link that somewhere down below. I think it was like 2 weeks ago you guys posted that.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really cool stuff. And another episode I'll shout out. You talked to kind of the raging father, dad rage, but just more about I'm an expecting dad. We're due in November, so definitely caught my eye, and a very cool episode. Something that I've explored a lot even before becoming a father is men's groups. I've had a few folks on this podcast who run men's groups and things like that, and the father piece of it adds a very unique dynamic to it. So very cool episodes, and I really appreciate what you're doing with the podcast for sure, as well as the coaching business. So tell us a little bit about the coaching business. You're based out of Austin, Texas, but all of this is mostly online, right?
Yeah, most of it's online, and I have a couple live events each year, one in the spring, one in the fall here in Austin, Texas. And I started the business about 4 years ago. I actually didn't know I was starting a business. I thought I was just going to put together a product. I'm like, okay. I was on a 6-month sabbatical, or I was 6 months into a 1-year sabbatical, and I'm traveling around, and I see coaches in gyms interacting with clients, and I'm just witnessing discomfort. I'm witnessing the coach isn't hearing the client, and the client, there's just there's a massive miscommunication. I go, wow, I can look at this just the same way you can look at people who are dating and you go, well, this isn't going to last long.
Ooh, yeah.
And so while I was at Barbell Shrugged, we had built our team up to, we had over 20 something people that we were working with. And I had signed up for a lot of leadership development courses, and I had a coach, and I went to workshops and seminars and basically learned how to become a better communicator. Obviously I was okay at it since I was podcasting and communicating in a broadcast sense. I had that nailed down, but actually listening to people, hearing what was actually going on for them, I needed a lot of help with that. And then years later, as I'm wandering the planet and I'm witnessing coaches, I go, wow, they actually have a problem with this too. So my original motivation was to help them with mostly leadership training, communication, the soft the soft skills of coaching is really where I wanted to help. And then once I put together the first course, and I was leading a group of students through it, because what I like to do is I like to say, hey, we want to achieve this end result, and we're going to figure out where you're starting, and then we're going to build the curriculum as we go. And then by the third week, I realized almost everybody here needs some business and marketing advice, because you know what? They may be really great coaches, but if they don't have any clients, we really can't help them. So the Strong Coach began developing from the very beginning, where it started up as leadership communication training, and then evolved into business training as well. And so once I got off the ground, I pretty much took a step back from it, and then let one of my first students, who I'd been mentoring him for a number of years prior to that course. And then he was like, I want to like really, help you with this. I'm like, I just wanted to create a course and sell it. And next thing you know, he takes off with it and starts building the business. And yeah, it's been the easiest business I ever built. It's been extremely profitable. And yeah, we've helped a lot of coaches. I love the types of coaches we attract. We attract the weirdos. They're like they study like David Weck, the Weck method, and they're into Paul Chek, and they're into plant medicines and all the wacky stuff, all the like holistic wellness type people. So yeah, really happy to be working with people who I resonate with myself.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. And yeah, obviously I've been following all that stuff. Weck was just on the Ready State podcast. That's the first time I think I've really heard him speak. He was also the inventor of the Bosu ball, and
Yeah.
a lot of stuff. If you guys are scrolling on Instagram, you'll see the Weck method with the jump ropes and some different kind of slant boards, right? As far as the
Yeah.
foot training.
Yeah,
So,
I primarily use the rope and some of his boards for training my feet.
yeah.
And that's the primary things I do with his stuff. He came through town. I wanted to go to a seminar, but I had a conflict. But I've spent a couple days with that guy total, and he's a genius. I
Sounds
mean,
like it,
he's crazy, but he's a genius.
a lot of times those go hand in hand. You brought
They
up Paul
do.
Chek. He's another one of the crazy geniuses for real, for real. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a few of his books as well, and that's stuff that from day one, getting into the fitness space was definitely wow. Who's this guy? What's he doing? And now I don't think I'd heard him talk for a few years, and then I went to download one of his podcasts, and he's talking about being able to be on the next plane of existence and
Yeah.
all sorts of spiritual stuff, and trusting him. And again, not necessarily for me being connected to that. It's like, I kind of want to know more because it's pretty interesting. I personally haven't done any of the psychedelics and things like that, but it definitely seems like there is something there, the third eye, and again, that kind of woo-woo ish, which again, there's something there. And I'm here in Boulder, pretty much right next to Boulder, and
Oh yeah.
everyone's got crystals and Reiki from Zoom Reiki. And
Yeah. It's I like to think about it as like I think a lot of times we say woo woo when we just mean mystical.
hmm,
And it's like I mean, whatever is mystical is something that I just don't quite understand yet. So
mhm,
there's a lot of I sat down with a guy recently, and he goes, "How do you've got this whole scientific thing. You're very science oriented, and then you're also pretty mystical. Like, how do you, or spiritual is what he said, is like,
yeah,
how do you like make these two things work together?" And I was like, well, I don't like to think about it as spiritual. I like to think about it as mystical. And
mm,
then you have science. And the truth is like I'm validating my own truth throughout the day all the time. I don't need a research paper to tell me what's true if I can witness it for myself. Most people, they're in this world, there's a lack of trusting your own eyes for validation. And I've had personal experiences that are very you would call them mystical in nature, but now they're extremely obvious to me. I go, oh, it's just obvious. It's as obvious as a lot of these scientific principles. It's mystical to other people because they haven't had the experience of it, and trying to explain it on a piece of paper or with words at all, you're never going to have the words to explain them. But once someone has the experience, then I think it things become obvious and less mystical.
yeah. And I think it actually came up on my podcast earlier today with Rob Wolf. I think he quoted Arthur C. Clarke, but basically that 20 years from now, there's going to be stuff that to us today is like, oh, that's just accepted, just like 50 years ago, being able to say, hey, I can pull this thing out of my pocket and pretty much get anything in the world on this little device and talk to pretty much anyone in the world, and video call them. Like, these were sci-fi things that people talk about, and it's like, wow, that'll never happen, but
Yeah.
here we are, and it's like it's beyond commonplace now. So there's definitely things that again would seem mystical 20 years from now might be the stuff that is woo today, or kind of the other way around. But yeah, that's definitely super duper interesting stuff there, and I feel like we could do many hours just going into that kind of piece of it.
Yeah.
But I want to jump back to the nuance of personal responsibility, which was the kind of first thing you threw at me, and would love for you to expand on
Yeah. I submit some of these things and I forget about them.
that.
But yeah, the nuance of personal responsibility. I think that there's uh, what we have in the world at large right now is a lack of personal responsibility. Are you familiar with the drama triangle?
I'm not.
Okay, in psychology, there's what's funny is my fiance, she's a psychotherapist, and I brought up the drama triangle, and she didn't know what I was talking about, and I was like, well, here's all these, it's a whole list of studies. They're like, oh, they never taught us this in school. I was like, okay, cool. But
Hmm.
the drama triangle is something that every human creates in their mind in relationship to other people. And the triangle is made up of one point is the hero, another point is the victim, and the other point is the villain. And so inside this drama triangle, or in the world as we're operating and we're meeting people, and we start placing, well, this person's a villain, this person's a victim, this person's a hero, and we also place ourselves in that too. Like, oh, I'm a hero to this person. So like a lot of codependent relationships are one person is playing the hero and the other person is playing the victim, and the hero has this feels this need to save the victim. And from, and villains are primarily externalized. I got to save them from, their parents or their financial situation or whatever it is. And it's the drama triangle is really easy to see in politics, because if there's a left leaning politician, they're going to tell the people that are in their district that they are being victimized by the villain, which is
Hmm.
this, this right wing extremist, right? And so they paint this picture, and so the for someone to position themselves as a hero and try to position someone else as a villain against somebody, it's it's pretty gross actually, and these politicians do know what they're doing. But this is a really, I think I bring it up with politics because I think it's obvious. It's less
Hmm.
obvious when we start getting into our own personal lives, like what's happening at home or what's happening in the workplace. But in politics, it's pretty easy. It's like, oh yeah, they're constantly, there you go. You got the drama triangle up here on the screen. And so uh the the thing is most people are in victim, and you can tell that they're in victim because they're blaming anything other than themselves for where they're at in life. And in the United States, at least, it has become popular to be the victim. Before it was like if you wanted to be cool, you wanted to be the hero. But now it's like the victim has been put on this pedestal. And so a lot of times people wake up to this fact. They go, wow, I've been a victim. I've been blaming everybody else for my problems. Why is my business not working? Why am I always in debt? Why is it that beautiful women don't pay attention to me? Why, all these things. It's like, it's somebody else's fault. It's the economy's fault. And so a lot of times people go, they swing really hard and they go, you know what? I'm gonna take personal responsibility. I'm going to transcend this drama triangle, and I'm gonna assume that everything is my fault. Right? Which can be very, very healthy. Any situation that I approach when something happens is what is it that I could have done to avoid this situation? For instance, I had some really gnarly stuff happen in 2017 with my business. And the first thing that I did, because I was in this place of taking personal responsibility, is I looked at like every point in this business relationship where something where I sacrificed my own values, I sacrificed my own boundaries. And it was really healthy because I go, look, I learned all these lessons. I did it this way, and I now know better, and I'm going to do it a different way moving forward. So taking that personal responsibility can be really healthy in being able to develop as a human. Now, where the nuance is if you're always assuming that you're responsible for everything going on in your world, what ends up happening for a lot of people is they don't realize that even the people they surround themselves with, there's this thing where they go, "Oh, everyone around me is just a reflection of me." But the nuance is taking personal responsibility also may mean cutting somebody out of your life. It's like, oh, this person is constantly what's it called? Energy vampire or something like
Mhm.
that. They're always
Yeah.
draining me of my energy. And so so yeah, it's sometimes people will go, "Oh, I just need to take personal responsibility and I need to figure out what my role is in this, and then that will solve the problem." And it becomes very egotistical. And what that person needs to do is they do need to just realize that taking personal responsibility may mean just cleaning up who you're hanging out with in your life. And that's to me, that's like the nuance that most people are missing in the conversation.
Yeah, there's a lot there for sure. Appreciate you sharing that with us. And now I flipped us side to side. I think
Yep.
people will figure it out. I'm sorry for anyone watching and all the bouncing around. That was definitely not the biggest version of that. I created a little PDF as you were talking. I had to Google it last minute again. We do not have a full 20-person team like you guys did at Barbell Shrug, but yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, my wife's also a therapist. She specializes in relationships and sex, and yeah, not I'll have to ask her later if that's something she's heard of, in fact. And very cool though, in terms of, yeah, we're seeing a lot of that with the current student debt crisis and the recent kind of rulings, and it's been interesting to engage with folks on both sides of the aisle. I consider myself somewhere in the center, to say the least, but to try to have nuanced conversations. And ironically, again, I mentioned the earlier podcast today with Rob Wolf. I'm sure you've heard some of his political ramblings at some point, and he had a whole podcast about libertarianism, that he explained why that no longer exists, and it's a good reason. Hopefully, in the grand scheme of things, it's a positive, net positive, that they had to get rid of that so that his partner Dave Dooley could save the world in his own special way. But not sure if you know about any of that story. But
I don't know anything about that. Is libertarianism over, or is it just over for Rob?
well, Rob, I believe, still believes in that side of things. I didn't push him on that topic, but he had a podcast called the Controversial Truth, with his partner Dave Dooley, and Dave ended up getting an opportunity to have some really powerful political things going on, and financial things, and so they kind of had to erase that all of that from the internet, so that kind of wouldn't be held against them, because I would say they had some pretty strong views that again
Yeah.
could certainly be taken the wrong way. So there's a lot of interesting parallels to what you're talking about
It's
this
easy to
drama
take people out of
triangle.
context. Sometimes
Yeah, but also just to disagree with them. I think they tried to be very in context. It's hard to take them out of context. I used to listen to that podcast for sure, and I would say I'm a political novice. And at the end of the day, I try to fight hard to not go into any of these things. And this is kind of my spiritual journey. I try to be as kind of more Buddhist, chase that concept. I have a little Buddhist tattoo on my arm there.
oh, yeah, nice.
And so I definitely, follow guys like you and talking about your spiritual journey. And I haven't gotten to the point of like, yeah, taking psychedelics or things like that. But it's something definitely down the line I'd be open to. And as much as I can, I'm trying to figure out how to do that spiritual journey, with, again, the realities of religion and politics and interacting with clients and people. So that's where I love doing these podcasts. Is it's called Bono's Health, but it's really about, I used to call it Bono's Stuff, and I tried to focus on health, but then I'm like, I can't not talk to guys like you when we have the opportunity. And I'm like, hey, would you be willing to jump on? And you are, and here we are. So yeah, I really appreciate learning more stuff. And that's a very cool share from you about the, again, drama triangle. And I see how that can be very applicable in today's day and age, for sure. So there's a lot of really cool stuff there. Any other thoughts before we move into one of your other bullet points that you probably forgot what they are?
Yeah, well, in regard to the drama triangle, I think what people need to keep in mind is that the idea is not to move around inside of it. So sometimes people go, "Oh, I'm going to go from victim to hero." Where you really want to go is just transcend the whole thing and go, "Oh, I've been placing myself here," and realize that the entirety of that model is completely, an illusion made up by your own mind, and it takes you out of the reality of what is.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah, that's some powerful stuff to reflect on. And I think again, we've seen this mental health crisis over the last few years, whether we call it a crisis or an awakening or an awareness or whatever, however we're going to phrase it. But with all that, and the kind of push now of life coaches, mental health coaches, the what I BetterHelp is the one that's on every single podcast. I'm surprised they haven't asked me to be a sponsor yet. Maybe one day. Um, but there's a lot of interesting stuff there, and again, the concept of therapy is a pretty powerful one, and I think that's why a lot of people turn to plant medicines, and there's a lot of very cool stuff happening there. And I also heard you talk about I think it was with Jeremiah, or it might have been with your other guy who dresses as a banana in airports, whose name I forgot right now, but walks around with his boombox. What was his name? You had him
Oh
on
yeah, that
recently.
was Jacques.
Yes, yes, very interesting sounding fella. I think it was that episode. It might have been Jeremiah episode where you're talking about the fact that people will go and do like 2 or 3, ayahuasca experiences and be like, I want to be a shaman. And like, okay, well, there's like a lot more to it than that, folks.
Yeah.
And so there's the nuance to a lot of these things. And yeah, it'd be very interesting to kind of, go down that rabbit hole of how a lot of those things come together. But that kind of brings us naturally to leadership, which was the second one you wanted to talk about there. So tell us about leadership.
Yeah. So, well, I do want to say one thing in regard to for therapists and life coaches alike is I think our primary job is to help people get in better contact with reality. And so most of the suffering that occurs for an individual is that they're out of touch with it. And if you look around our society right now, that's a huge part of the problem is people are they want the world to conform to their inner experience instead of conforming their inner experience to reality, to what's happening in the world. And um, so yeah, I just want to point that out because I do notice a lot of therapists and coaches giving clients a little in their attempt to validate their experience, their internal experience, that's like they're giving them permission to be out of touch with reality, which is again in the long term just harm
Mm,
them and
yeah,
harm everyone around them.
yeah,
Uh,
that's a really important distinction to make for sure. And that it sounded like you had some more before you took your sip there. I don't know.
no, that was it. That was
Okay.
it.
One of the more impactful books I've read in this kind of journey that we're talking about here for me was a book called Awareness by Anthony DeMello. I don't know if you've come across that.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
I believe I picked it up or heard of it from Tim Ferriss, and I think if anyone's listened to his podcast, which with the statistics that are out there about his podcast, I'm pretty sure there's no one listening to this who would not have heard one of his podcasts. He's pretty popular guy. But I think he asked the question, "What's the book you've gifted the most often?" And that led him to this book, Awareness. And I believe he has like 40 copies, is what he said, at any given time at his house. He kind of keeps the stock there, and anyone comes by, he'll just hand them a copy of that book. So it's pretty quick. Quick read. I think it's only like $9 on Amazon or something like that. It was written by a Jesuit priest who then started to explore, and I think he was from India, but he started to explore a lot of other religions and see some of the parallels and kind of try to break down the lines of religion and say, like, where's the commonality? And a lot of it just comes back to awareness and being in the moment and just saying, like, whatever's in front of you. We're on this podcast right now. You're out there listening to this podcast right now. That's what you need to be aware of. Where I think even then, I think he started that book in the late '80s. But we have the phones in front of us. We're checking out who just left me a voicemail, who just texted me. But that awareness is really, it was a pretty amazing book. I feel like I only read it once, and even that had pretty strong impact on me of like putting a lot of these concepts together that I've been looking for a long time. And I'm curious to go down that path and read a bunch more on that. And so if that's something piques your interest, the other one that my wife and I talk about, not turning this into a book club, is The Courage to Be Disliked. Have you heard of that one?
No.
Man, come on, we got to get you reading, man. That's the one I would say we previously had given out the most, and that's Ichiro Kishimi. And I'm just looking at it, I have it right there. It's actually written very interestingly. It's a dialogue between like a 20-something-year-old kid and an old wise man, and so it's based on Adlerian psychology, with a mix of kind of the spirituality piece. So it's very cool. Picked up a lot of really cool things from there. So I'll throw that out to you as well as the listener.
Yeah, I would love to check those out.
Yeah, and I think he actually has a sequel which we just ordered, which we had no idea about, is The Courage to Be Happy. And so there's some really, again, powerful stuff, I think, that that we've taken away from the previous one. So I'm very excited to read that one. And yeah, we have a kid on the way too. So a lot of this stuff is like, I need some perspective, man. I need to know. And again, I've had a few, guys like Rob Wolf, Kelly Starrett, and his wife Juliet on here, and recently, and in the last few weeks. And I'm like, what do I ask these guys? They're like these leaders in the industry, and I'm like, is there hope for humanity? Is my question. So I don't know if you have an answer to that different than they did, but is there hope for humanity where we are and where things are going? And obviously, I think, it sounds like you're trying to do your part to help coaches, and you see a problem like personal trainers having trouble connecting with their clients. Maybe they can get them more push-ups and pull-ups and things like that, and picking up more weight off the ground. But if they can't connect with them on a human level, that there's something missing there. So sounds like you're doing your part there. But yeah, what do you think? Is there hope for humanity, for my child, for my son?
I think there is. I'm actually listening to a book right now that's called "The End of the World is Just the Beginning," and the guy's making a case for, if you're in the United States or Mexico, you're going to fare pretty well moving forward. And what we're witnessing right now, through there's a depopulation issue, and that the generation that should be producing the most is actually and consuming the most. The consumption is the highest between the ages of 25 and 45. That's when people are really setting up their lives and their families. And there's just not that many in the rest of the world. We've had a positive population growth in the United States, but majority of the countries outside the United States, there's actually been a depopulation. And so it doesn't mean like China is shrinking in numbers at this moment, but the age range of the people 25 to 45 is much smaller than it was the previous generation. And so when consumption goes down, GDP goes down, things start to collapse. And so basically, the last 75 years, we've had a lot of globalization due to worldwide peace. And in the book, he's basically stating that everything's going to deglobalize. So we got decentralization happening. We have technology for decentralization. We have deglobalization happening out of necessity, because trade is going to likely come to a halt for various reasons, which I don't, I'm not the one who wrote the book, but reading the book actually gave me a little bit of help, a little bit of hope, in that, especially being an American, it definitely made me feel better because we have all the resources we need in the United States, and it's easy to transport goods in the United States. So I think we're going to be okay. For humanity as a whole, yeah, I think that there is hope. I think it's just always changing, right? Like what it was 100 years ago and what it is today are completely different. And my fiance and I are talking about having kids right now, and I have zero. The way I see it is, I'm not concerned about how they're going to be in the world. Is the world good enough for my kids? I'm concerned about, are my kids going to participate in the world in what makes it better? The same thing. I don't worry about myself. When I go out and I talk to people, and I'm trying to help people, and I have concerns, and they're like, "Oh, you must be worried for you." I'm like, "Look, I ain't worried for me. I'm good. I'm adaptable. I'm healthy. I can take care of myself." I'm looking at the swaths of people who are overly reliant on systems they don't understand. And so Humanity, I don't know. I don't even know how to even think about that. But I can tell you that my lineage, my kids, they're going to be fine. They're going to do well. And a big part of that is knowing how to take care of yourself, just knowing the basic stuff. Most adults running around are just overripe children. They're
Hmm.
not, they don't actually, they don't think like adults. They're driven by their emotions. They're driven by emotions they don't understand or they're trying to avoid. It's not even uh we're all emotionally driven for sure, but what is that what is that space between stimulus and response, right?
Mhm.
And so the majority of the population is going to suffer and is going to be at the whim of whatever's happening in politics or whatever it is. Most people are going to suffer. Most people are suffering. Like humanity as a whole, like it's depressing. The last few years, just watching how everyone's become so divided, and the rise of victim mentality, and all these things. I've gone through some like depression over the last few years, just witnessing everything, and there being times where I didn't feel like there was any hope. But and it's really shrank my consideration. I'm like, you know what? I can't worry about the whole world. All I can do is make sure that I'm good. And this goes into the leadership conversation. It's like I got to be able to lead myself. And we're talking about leadership, sustainability. It's all the same. Uh, I got to be able to lead myself first. Am I good? Can I take care of myself? Am I contributing to society? Am I doing good things? Am I building good karma? All right, my partner, how's my relationship with her? Is she doing the same? All right, our family, when we have kids, that's what I'm going to be concerned with. And it's these concentric circles that work out, right? It's like, okay, now I'm concerned with the city of Austin, Texas. How's it doing? Well, it's a bit of a disaster at times. Uh, and I can't even impact the city of Austin that much, right? Like what makes me think I'm going to be making an impact way out there? And there's a really great phrase in politics, which is was it think globally, act locally.
Mhm, mhm.
And that is like so many people are worried about what's happening at the presidential level or international diplomacy, and they aren't even aware of what's going on in their own backyard. They're just so wrapped up in all the BS. Um, and so, yeah, over the last few years, I've gotten very much in touch with what is it that I can make an impact and keep the circle small and, be the change.
Yeah. The funny thing I would say, the counter to that, if you will, is based on technology and based on where the world's been, at least in my experience, the kind of like next door and Facebook groups of the local areas that we've been living in recently becomes overwhelming. And it's like I don't know how to make an impact locally when it's like, hey, everyone's voting on this thing, and like we need everyone. The community we live in, 320 units right now here in Superior, Colorado. It's a $3 million pool project. So divide that out, it's like $10,000 per owner, and they couldn't get the critical mass needed to even vote no or yes, because I don't know why. I don't know why. But a lot of people who might have their whole life savings involved, like they're like, I don't want to have to pay an additional $10,000, and I'm voting no, but we couldn't get that. So you can't even make change in these kind of things. So it becomes frustrating, and it's easier to argue about Trump versus Biden or all that fun stuff. But yeah, it's really crazy how this just came up again with Rob. Anyone who's listening to this one, if they haven't listened to the Rob Wolf one, go listen to that, because there's a lot. He goes down that same rabbit hole of, again, and he might be getting involved in the local stuff, and that was kind of one of his big takeaways or messages is get involved in the local scene. You can make a huge difference in what schools are doing. Get parents involved, and if you make a solid enough, common sense enough, scientifically based enough kind of situation, like that's what's going to happen. And we talked about the apocalypse, and if systems collapse, having that community, it's going to come down to do you have of this 320 foot units we're in here, is if I can get 100 people to be like, hey, are we going to do this together? Are we going to survive together? You can create a pretty strong bond of folks that we've seen in the CrossFit space, we've seen in martial arts. He does the Brazilian jiu-jitsu stuff. I think in Austin you have a pretty amazing, from what I've seen, I've only visited once or twice, but it seems like you have a pretty cool fitness space where a lot of folks kind of know each other, get to know each other, and
Yeah.
and create some strong bonds. So again, in the event of the apocalypse, the zombie apocalypse or whatever, it's an interesting topic. I did want to just double down on the stimulus to response piece, because again, that's one that comes up for me a lot. Something I'm always working on, especially as a New Yorker who gets enraged.
I'm friends with some New Yorkers. Yeah, there's like they all had to do some work,
Yeah. So I'm kind of undoing many years of Brooklyn living there. But that's a huge one, and it comes mostly from Buddhist principles. In fact, I think one of the first places I really heard it phrased that way, I heard Neil Brennan talk about it, who was one of the writers on Chappelle's show, has become a pretty popular comedian. But I think Phil Jackson's book, I think it was called Sacred Hoops, is the book I read, and he talked about that. And I think Steve Kerr ended up picking up that kind of concept and running with it. Obviously, one of his players, and now one of the best coaches out there. And then the other piece to it is control what you can control, which has been a very popular kind of stoic, daily stoic concept of we're all going to die. Control what you can control, and if you can't control it, why are you spending time arguing with people on the internet about it? So sorry, I said a lot there. I'll let you unpack something there.
Well, yeah, I like to go like I'll speak to like the locally thing is, you were talking about getting involved with the schools, but I think that most parents are more concerned about what's going on at the schools than their ability to make impact on their kids at home. Right? They're not even thinking that they're still projecting the responsibility of their kids being raised by some teacher with a master's degree that learned some really weird shit and wants to pass it on to your kid.
I'm just gonna jump in because I heard you talk about this. Is you were homeschooled, you plan to homeschool, and I know how you have some strong feelings about that whole institution.
Yeah, I've got a few friends, like Ben Greenfield's a friend of mine, another guy, Jesse Elder, and the thing that all three of us have in common is that we were homeschooled. And so when we meet each other, like the first time I met each one of these people, I was like, there's something that like magnetizes us to each other. And there's something that is like really deep there that I don't even have to know that. Like, I didn't know that my friend Jesse was homeschooled until years after hanging out. And so there's like a certain type of weirdo that's developed when you're homeschooled, because basically I was in charge of creating my own structure in my childhood, and they were too. And so there's a level of, I don't think it's rebellion. It's more of a like, I don't actually need your help. Like it's not a lone wolf thing. It's not like it's more like I don't need you to tell me, I don't need you to give me some rules to follow. Cause I just see, and I have friends that have been to school, like my friend Max Shank, we podcast every Monday, and he went to school. He went through the whole system, and he just calls it obedience school. He's like, it's a really good place to learn how to be obedient. I believe that most that kids can learn everything that's K through 12 that's meaningful probably by the time they're 10. I don't think mathematics it's not that complex when taught well. There's a lot of wasted time in that structure. And I think that, I remember my friends going to school and coming home and then having homework. I'm like, what the hell were you doing for 8 hours in the classroom if you have to come home and do homework? And then if your parents couldn't help you with the homework, you actually didn't learn the material. So who's teaching? It's, even if you send your kids to school and they're there for 8 hours a day, then you're still responsible for their education. You're responsible for their development. And I think that, it happens worse in poor communities, because both parents are not present. And schools become daycares. And it's like, I need someone to watch my kids so I can go work. And so the parents exhausted when they get home, the kids got homework when they get home. It doesn't seem like a good idea. And the traditional school is still so new. Like the homeschooling is actually the norm, and sending your kid to a school to be taught, that's only like royalty had that until 100 years ago. There it just didn't happen. So it's a fairly new phenomena, and I think it's dangerous, to be honest. I'll just like I'll be controversial. I think it's a dangerous idea. You're putting your kids in the hands of some person who, like, I knew a bunch of education majors in college. I wasn't overly impressed with their, ability to help develop the consciousness of human beings. I don't trust them. I don't. We shouldn't trust most people out there. Like I said, most people, 99% of the population are overripe children. They have no business developing other humans. And they're going to anyways, but they're not going to develop. They're not going to be a key role in the development of my humans.
Mhm. Well, that actually is the other main thing I wanted to talk about. So that it's an interesting one to go over to the fitness space and your business of coaching coaches. My other podcast I have is Demand Better podcast with a personal trainer in New York City, David Corona, no relation to the virus. And we talk about demanding better from, and the very first episode we did was demanding better from personal trainers. We try to call out pretty much every little industry that has all sorts of problems. We just did one about dentistry. We've obviously called out my physical therapy folks. So I want to come back to you and ask about, again, the majority of the folks you're working with are in the fitness space,
Yep.
fitness coaches. And so with the way the world's been going there, I'd love to hear a little bit more if you don't mind shifting to that energy of, is the fitness space a lot online, right? There's still that desire for connection, I think, going on, that a lot of folks are either they supplement in there without necessarily the best fitness piece of it. I kind of throw that request out as like, do we need a Jack LaLanne to kind of lead us into the promised land, some kind of celebrity to do it? Or again, are we able to see these kind of nodes rising up and the kind of the evolution of, again, the space you kind of grew some of your celebrity out of was the CrossFit space, and that's devolved and evolved and all these fluctuations. So
Yeah.
there's a question somewhere in there. I think you got what I'm going with, though.
Yeah, I've done a lot of thinking about, CrossFit was the last fitness revolution, right? Jack LaLanne's the godfather or
Right.
the grandfather of fitness, right? By the way, I rented his house out in Palm Springs for a week just to be in that energy. But while I created some curriculum, it was a pretty neat experience. But I think the CrossFit revolution, like, man, say what you will about Greg Glassman, he accomplished his goal. And I can tell you how you can tell that he accomplished his goals, because I can go into a Lifetime Fitness, I can go into a Gold's Gym, I can go into any of these places, and you're going to find bumper plates, you're going to find kettlebells, you're going to find people doing functional fitness, that version of functional fitness. He did it. We don't really need CrossFit boxes anymore. Like he changed the game in what, 20 years? Not even. I'd say like 10, 15 years, transformed everything. And I sat here and I've thought long and hard about, I kept thinking, what's the next evolution? What's the next like brand that comes along and just shakes up the whole industry? I'm really big at spotting trends. I like to be at the beginning. I like to be an early adopter. And the conclusion that I've come to is there isn't going to be one. So there isn't going to be another big revolution that gets that much attention. Everything is decentralizing. So when they started, there were just not as many websites, right? There were not as many blogs up. Now it's like there's workouts constantly being put out on Instagram, YouTube, all these things. People have developed some really cool training modalities, things that I think should be more popular. And They just aren't. But what I'm witnessing is it kind of like proliferates out, and not under a single brand name, but all these ideas are just seeping around the internet and
Mhm.
seeping around from to all the different people out there. So I think that we're we're in an age where there's like micro influencers, micro fitness influencers, and there's always going to be that one person, like an Arnold Schwarzenegger that comes along and, they got 20 million followers and this and that, or, The Rock, he could be considered that type of influencer. He's got other things going on though. Um, and I think if someone's just a fitness influencer, then be happy with 2,000 followers, 3,000 followers, whatever it is. And, uh, and making the impact that way, but I don't see a big wave coming through again. I see it being much more of like a decentralized leadership in regard to health and fitness.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation. It's a little similar to what Kelly and Juliet Starrett said in their kind of response about the apocalypse and all that. Was we have to be nodes again, going back to the local piece. So it is, being able to have a tribe. Seth Godin talks about, right. If I'd rather have 100 really passionate followers and high paying clients than 10,000 or 15,000. So there's a really interesting piece there. And to the other point that I want to come back to for my selfish purposes is I think I'm really good at what I do. I think I can help people get out of pain, feel better, have a 30-year plan of, how to save for their physical retirement so that when they're 70 years old, they can still be training for the Centennial Olympics, as Peter Attia talks about. So I think I'm really good at that, but I'm terrible at marketing. Like I'm open, I'm honest, I'm consistent. I do some of the things. I'm far from like doing all the things of, hey, I'm looking for 5 people to get really healthy and like do all those call outs that I make fun of, but they work. And people, all those systems out there like are what people respond to. And if you can make a change by showing some cleavage or, or some
It
skin or
works.
whatever, it works. So should I ride on my, and then you get, I don't know if you're familiar with Bob and Brad, the 2 most famous physical therapists on the internet.
Mm-mm.
That's their little joke. That's how they introduce themselves, but they've been putting out a video pretty much, I think three a week or something for like 6-7 years. And they have, 6 million followers on YouTube alone and on other channels too. And so like, they're not doing any of that stuff. They don't cut, they don't edit. They're just like, hey, oops, we goofed that one, but like we're gonna keep going, and they're not doing all the crazy stuff that a lot of other people are doing, but there's a genuineness there that eventually kind of I think shines through. So it's really interesting to see how these kind of things are getting built and how there's tons of money in all these channels. And all you need is 1,000 watch hour or 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours to start making money on YouTube. And like you can make a decent living if you start going above that, right? You can make 4,000,
Yeah.
5,000 a month.
Well, so one of my clients, when I met him in San Francisco. I had a little gathering at a cafe, and he goes, "I got 200,000 YouTube subscribers." And I go, "Well, how much money are you making?"
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "About $5,000 a month off of YouTube." He's like, "But that's not enough for my lifestyle." I'm like, "Yeah, you have 200,000 YouTube subscribers, then you should be doing a lot better than $5,000 a month."
Yeah.
So my kind of the rule that I follow is you should be making $1 a month per follower.
Mm.
And if that's like minimum, that means that you have a somewhat compelling offer. If you're making $2, you have a great offer. If you're making $3 or $4 a follower per month, then you're crushing. Your offer is extremely compelling and people can't wait to work with you. And so over the next year, he went from like 5,000 a month to $50,000 a month. So one of the ways we did this is really highlighting what makes that person different. And so I think that the average coach that's like, I can help anybody and I want to be able, like, I can help you with your back problem, your knee problem. I can help you lose weight. I can do any of those things. The only clients they're ever going to get are the people who are really close to them. There's something like that just draws them in. Like someone can survive that way as a trainer. But somebody really wants to excel, make a really big impact. One of the things that I've noticed is they have a really good way of niching down. So the formula I've got for niching, and the guy I think who's done it the best recently is knees over toes guy.
Yeah.
So the guy's got sound training principles. I've been into his program before. I got curious about it. I'm like, oh, is this guy legit? I was like, yeah, this guy could probably teach you how to fix your shoulders. He could, all sorts of stuff. And but I go, look, he's talking to 35 to 55-year-old guys. That's the demographic. The value graphic is they value athleticism.
That's why he's dunking a basketball in every other post.
Exactly. They value athleticism.
With his shirt off in the sun.
Yeah. They used to be athletic, but I'm not athletic anymore. Why? Well, I'm a victim of my knee pain, right? There is a problem that's standing between me and the thing that I value. I value being athletic, but the problem is I can't actually achieve athleticism because my damn knee. And he didn't go after back pain. He didn't go after neck pain. He didn't go after shoulder. He could have done any of that. He said knee pain. So that he probably just focused on the thing that was probably bothering him the most. And maybe he noticed that other people were too. So we've got the demographic, men aged 35 to 55. You got the value, which is athleticism, and you got the problem that's keeping them from achieving that value, and that is knee pain. So I think that, when I started Barbell Shrugged in 2012, it was a strength and conditioning podcast directed at CrossFitters. That was niche, right? It's not niche anymore. Fast forward 2022, 10 years later. And if I go look for a CrossFit podcast or strength and conditioning podcast about CrossFit, I'm going to run into at least 100, right? It's not a niche anymore. You got to become more specialized. And so that's one reason I really like to point out what he's doing is because he's specialized on the demo, he's specialized on the value, and he specialized on the problem. And so he hit that, he just nailed it. And so that's one reason he's doing really well. And his offer is, I can get you out of knee pain within, in a very short period of time. And, I think his offer online is he's got his book on Amazon. I think I bought that for like $10. And then he's got his online training, which is $50. Now he's somebody who can do low dollar offers because he has a massive following. And so, I really like for people to do a high dollar offer first, high ticket coaching. And that informs you and helps you build up the credibility where you could do the book. You could do the membership site that's $50 a month or $100 a month. But the coaches who start with like $100 a month thing that have 1,000 followers, I'm like, you're never gonna be full time. And so I really encourage people to go really niche, go high ticket, create an offer that those people really want. They're willing to spend $500 to $1,000 a month to achieve. That then gives the coach the space they need to develop themselves. I can now afford to go get another certification or learn from somebody who's really good. I can pour myself into the clients that I do have. I can find out what's actually going on with them instead of assuming what it is. And then now I can write a book. Now I can create a low dollar offer that really speaks to those people because I got so intimate with a handful of people that I've been working with.
Yeah, and it's a little contrarian to what a lot of masterminds and business coaches say, which is having funnels and get them in that low ticket offer, and then you get them on your email list and give them the free value. It's the jab punch kind of Gary V thing, right? So there's some interesting stuff there. And again,
I do believe in that, but it's not where people should start. Build the funnel from your highest dollar amount for your ideal client and then work down. Whereas most people, they start with the low dollar and work their way up because then you're going to end up with clients you don't like.
And we saw that with like the Groupon concept in CrossFit, right? You're like,
Oh,
People
dude,
are
that
like,
was
who? Yeah.
I own 2 gyms in Memphis, Tennessee, and we tried the Groupon thing, and we're like, "Oh my god, we got 30 people into our fundamentals class, high five." And then, within the next 6 months, we realized that these people were breaking contracts and weren't that committed, and it kinda messed up the vibe in the
Yeah. Yeah.
gym. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that was a little bit of the joke. I started CrossFit in 2010. We used to say there was an asshole filter of like, you get, because like when I started, I was in New York City. We had very few, CrossFits there in 2010, and one of them, the one I started at, CrossFit Gotham, you had to go is the basement of a church. They only had a 5, 6, 7 a.m. class. If you were in the 5 a.m., you had to open up the closet and pull out all the equipment for the day, and then if you were in the 7 a.m., you had to help clean up and put all that like you couldn't get any of these like Groupon people. You couldn't get most CrossFit members to stay, now because they could just go to the one down the street. That doesn't ask that much of them, but yeah, it completely changes it. It's like, yeah, you know what? Like we have a unique kind of group of people who are going to suffer together and pitch in that community sense that definitely went away over the years as it got more commercialized and more popular. But that's the nature of I think that kind of ebb and flow in especially in the fitness space. So yeah,
It's kinda like Burning Man. It's
yeah.
hard to get there. There's a natural filter for,
Hmm.
who ends up out there.
Yeah, yeah. I do
Yeah.
want to put up a better. I'm hoping this graphic is better of the. Is it gone? There it is. Yeah, there's the drama triangle. A little better than the one I had earlier. Visualization. So just so anybody who was trying to look earlier was a little too small. Of course, you could just Google
Yeah.
that in the Google machine. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I do want to respect your time and we can wrap up here. I don't know if you had any closing thoughts based on we covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I as a coach, I mean, I think our primary thing that we need to do is lead by example. If we're looking out and seeing how things should be different, are we doing it? How are we doing at home ourselves? Are we getting enough sleep? Are we eating well? I know so many people who are so concerned about the health of other people
Hmm.
and want to help other people and they work their ass off, but they don't take their own advice.
Right.
And so that's people learn by modeling other people's behavior. They don't
Hmm.
learn by what you say. What you say may draw them in, but they only do what you're willing to do yourself.
Yeah, it's a big takeaway I've tried to, launch recently. Jerry Durham, who's a physical therapist out of Philadelphia, and he's run a few successful businesses. He's a fun follow on Twitter. Anyone who likes Rage Against the Machine or Beastie Boys or the San Francisco Giants, you will get a kick out of his stuff. But he's a prolific poster. He posts like 77 times a day. I don't know. He's on there all the time. But yeah, he talks about sharing the journey and as a business owner or as a coach, whatever it is you're doing, again, being the change you want to see in the world, but also, hey, here's my struggles, and it's okay for that reality to be there versus, hey guys, I drink La Croix. Like, make sure you get your La Croix. This is what keeps me going, and things like that. So, it's that difference of genuineness versus selling something. How can I make some money off of this? Like all these little things. I do think we're going to see some kind of almost to Greg Glassman's point, cream rising to the top eventually, because I think right now there's a lot of people getting away with a lot of nonsense and still being able to kind of make a lot of money off of BS, off of promising again 6-pack abs and all that stuff. And I think there will be I'm hopeful the market will find its rhythm and regulate itself again to the concept of the cream will rise to the top, the libertarian, if you will, market. I think Rob Wolf will have some more things to say on that if if we get him on there. But he's hard to get on. I had to book him like 3 months ago, so finally
Yeah.
got him today.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, tell folks where they can find you, best places to connect. Your podcast, I'll link down below, the Mike Bledsoe Show.
Sure. Yeah, you
Anywhere
can go
else?
to thebledsoeshow.com. You can go to thestrongcoach.com. And on Instagram, I'm Mike_Bledsoe. That's it.
Pretty easy to find. Pretty easy to find. So guys, go check him out. Got some great content out there. Hope you got 1% better today. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a rating, review, all that stuff. And buy my La Croix. I got the referral link down below. And on that note, we'll take off. Thanks, Mike, for being on here.